All right, so welcome to this deep dive. We're doing something a little different today.
Oh,
Yeah, we're diving deep into a book.
okay.
And it's not just any book, it's the book of Thorns and Cloves
Oh,
by Yahya Sinwar.
I've heard of this one.
It's pretty intense. It's his autobiography, but it's really a look into the Israeli-Palestinian conflict from a very personal Palestinian perspective.
Definitely a unique perspective.
Absolutely. So, get ready, because we're going to go on a journey with Sinwar starting right from his childhood.
Let's do it.
Okay, so imagine you're in the Khan Yunis refugee camp.
Okay.
It's crowded, resources are scarce, and you always feel the presence of the Israeli military. Sinwar grew up in this environment,
Can't imagine what that was like.
and he doesn't sugarcoat it at all in his book. But what really struck me is how resilient the people were.
Resilience. Yeah, I think that's a theme we'll see throughout this story.
Definitely. Sinwar talks about making toys out of anything he could find,
Wow.
finding ways to play even with curfews in place. There was this incredible sense of community, family supporting each other through it all.
It's amazing how people find ways to create joy even in the toughest circumstances.
It makes you wonder, how do you hold on to hope in a situation like that?
Right.
And for Sinwar, that's where his political awakening comes in.
Mm.
He witnesses injustice firsthand, experiences discrimination, and then he meets figures like Sheikh Ahmed, who really connected faith and national identity for him.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it was a turning point. It sparked something in him, this drive to resist.
Makes sense. And how did that manifest early on?
Well, he describes this thing called the Bayou phenomenon.
Ew. What's that?
It was this kind of creative protest where Palestinians would urge Israeli soldiers to sell their weapons.
Really?
Yeah, it was this blend of defiance and humor, a way of challenging the occupation without resorting to violence.
That's fascinating. So they were using wit and creativity as forms of resistance.
Exactly. And as Sinwar gets older, the stakes get higher. He goes to university in Egypt, encounters new ideas, witnesses the rise of Islamic factions like Hamas. And this is important because they were challenging the authority of the established PLO.
Right, so this is where we start to see these internal divisions within Palestinian society.
Yeah, these ideological clashes play a huge role in the future of the conflict. Sinwar even talks about how his own brother, Mahmoud, supported the PLO.
Wow, so even within families, there were these deep divisions.
Absolutely. And then Sinwar faces the reality of resistance head on.
What do you mean?
He gets arrested, imprisoned by Israeli authorities. He ends up in places like the Nafa prison, enduring harsh conditions.
I can only imagine.
His prison experiences are really harrowing. He writes about leading hunger strikes, showing incredible resilience, but also about the psychological tactics used against him. Israeli interrogators would use fake informants to try and get confessions.
Oh, wow. That's just a whole other level of psychological warfare.
It's chilling to think about.
Definitely adds another layer of complexity to this conflict.
For sure. And then, amidst all of this, the First Intifada erupts.
So now it's not just Sinwar resisting, it's a mass uprising.
Yeah, Palestinians from all walks of life are rising up against the occupation. And Sinwar describes how the methods of resistance evolved during this period.
How so?
It starts with stone throwing, burning tires,
Right.
but then it moves towards more sophisticated tactics. He talks about the development of crude explosives, even rockets.
Wow, so things are really escalating.
Yeah, there's this growing sense of urgency, frustration, and then there's this element that Sinwar doesn't shy away from at all.
Yeah.
Targeted killings
Targeted killings. By who?
by Palestinian groups targeting suspected collaborators.
I imagine that raises all sorts of ethical questions.
Absolutely. Where do you draw the line in a conflict like this? There are no easy answers, and Sinwar grapples with these dilemmas head on.
It's a stark reminder that this is not just a political conflict, it's deeply personal with real lives at stake. So where do we go from here?
Well, then comes a moment that many thought would bring peace. The Oslo Accords. But Sinwar was skeptical.
Skeptical. Why?
He doubted that Oslo could actually deliver true peace and liberation for Palestinians.
And it wasn't just him, right?
No, this reflects a wider sentiment among Palestinians. They felt like the Accords didn't address their core grievances.
So even with these negotiations happening, the conflict continues to simmer.
Exactly. And you see this in things like the establishment of the Islamic University in Gaza.
Right. This symbol of resilience, determination.
But also a reminder that Palestinians are still striving for their own institutions, their own future. It's a complex situation, and Sinwar doesn't shy away from any of it. He even weaves his personal life into this larger political narrative.
Oh, in what
He
way?
talks about his marriage, the birth of his children, the relationships that sustained him through all of this.
It's a good reminder that this is a man with a family, with hopes and dreams beyond the struggle, even as that struggle shapes his entire world.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And through these personal glimpses, you see the true human cost of this conflict, the everyday challenges Palestinians face living under occupation.
It's easy to forget that these aren't just abstract concepts. They're a lived reality for so many people.
Constant surveillance, economic hardship, the threat of violence.
That's a lot to bear.
It really is. And it forces Palestinians to make incredibly difficult choices, to navigate a world where every decision could have life-altering consequences.
Wow. So what stands out to you most from this part of Sinwar's journey?
You know, honestly, it's just the sheer resilience that shines through.
The resilience?
Yeah, imagine growing up in a refugee camp, facing constant hardship and oppression,
Right.
and still finding the strength to resist, to hope, to build a life for yourself and your family. It's incredibly inspiring, even amidst all the darkness.
It really is remarkable, and his story is far from over.
Not even close. We're just getting started.
Okay, I'm ready for more.
All right, well, let's keep diving in.
Yeah.
Let's see where this journey takes us.
I'm ready when you are. And then things explode again with the Second Intifada.
Oh, yeah.
The violence escalates dramatically, and Sinwar is right there in the thick of it.
It's a whole different ballgame now.
Exactly. And this is where the book gets really intense, because he starts grappling with the use of suicide bombings,
Oh, wow.
which became more prevalent during this period.
Yeah. Reading those passages, it's heavy stuff.
Definitely.
Sinwar doesn't glorify the violence, but he also forces you to confront the desperation that might lead someone to that point.
It's a difficult thing to process.
For sure, it's a stark reminder that this isn't a conflict between equals.
Right.
One side has so much more power than the other, and that imbalance shapes everything.
Absolutely. The book doesn't condone the violence, but it asks you to understand the context.
Yeah, the impossible situations people were facing.
It makes you wonder, how would you lead in that kind of situation?
Right. How do you balance resistance with protecting your people, knowing the risks?
It's a heavy burden.
And that's where Sinwar's pragmatism comes in. He emerges as this strategic thinker, a leader who understands that it takes more than just armed resistance.
So he's not romanticizing violence.
No. He sees it as a tool, a way to force negotiations, to try and achieve something for his people.
We see that pragmatism play out in his role in the prisoner exchanges.
Oh, yeah, between Hamas and Israel.
High-stakes stuff.
Incredibly complex.
Lives hanging in the balance.
And Sinwar describes it all. The joy of welcoming released prisoners home, the celebrations,
But also the disappointment when negotiations break down.
the grief of families who are still waiting.
It's this constant back and forth between hope and despair.
There's this one moment that really stuck with me. Sinwar describes meeting a prisoner who had been in solitary confinement for years.
Oh, wow.
And when he's finally released, he's so overwhelmed by just being outside, by the sunlight, that he collapses.
That's a powerful image.
It really captures the psychological toll of it all.
It's a reminder that the scars of this conflict run deep.
They do. And amidst all this, Sinwar's also navigating the internal complexities of Hamas.
Right, because it's not this monolithic group.
No. There are power struggles, ideological debates.
Sinwar has to maintain unity while also dealing with the external conflict.
It's a lot to handle.
It is. And then you have the 2006 Palestinian legislative election,
Hamas wins.
defying expectations.
A huge victory.
It catapults them onto the global stage.
But it also brings a whole new set of challenges.
Because now they're not just a resistance movement, a
It's
territory under blockade,
facing international isolation.
dealing with Fatah.
It's a lot to take on.
And Sinwar doesn't shy away from the complexities.
No. He talks about the divisions in Palestinian society, the economic hardships in Gaza.
The ongoing conflict with Israel.
It's a very honest look at the situation.
He doesn't pretend to have all the answers.
But he offers a perspective that's raw, honest, unflinching.
You have to confront uncomfortable truths when you read this book.
You do. And through it all, you sense his unwavering commitment to the Palestinian cause.
This deep sense of purpose.
Yeah. He believes in the right to self-determination, in the liberation of his people.
That's what fuels him.
Absolutely. And then, in 2008, something happens that could have changed everything.
What happened?
Sinwar is targeted in an Israeli airstrike.
Wow. He survived.
He did.
It's amazing he's still alive.
It's a testament to his resilience. But it was a turning point.
So,
It was a reminder of the constant threat he and other Hamas leaders faced.
Of course.
And it also speaks to the changing tactics being used by Israel.
Like targeted killings.
Exactly. It's a very disturbing tactic.
It raises a lot of questions about international law.
For sure. And this experience has a profound impact on Sinwar.
In what way?
It makes him even more determined to strengthen Hamas's military capability.
So he doubles down on the resistance.
He oversees the development of tunnels, rocket production, fighter training.
It's an arms race.
And it intensifies during this period. Hamas wants to be able to hit back, to raise the cost of the occupation for Israel.
It's a dangerous game.
It is. And we see this play out in the 2012 and 2014 wars.
Between Hamas and Israel.
Sinwar doesn't hold back in describing the fighting, the devastation.
But also the resilience of the Palestinian people.
His belief in armed resistance is unwavering.
He sees it as essential for achieving Palestinian liberation.
But even with that commitment, he still recognizes the importance of political strategy, of diplomacy, of international support.
He knows that military power alone isn't enough.
Right. He talks about building alliances, garnering global sympathy, pressuring Israel on multiple fronts.
It's a multifaceted approach.
It is. And throughout all of this, his narrative remains deeply personal.
He talks about the tough decisions he had to make, the sacrifices people endured.
The sense of loss felt by families.
It's a reminder that there are human lives at stake.
Always. And Sinwar also sheds light on the internal dynamics within Hamas.
The debates, the tensions.
The challenges of maintaining unity under pressure.
It's a rare glimpse into their decision-making process.
It is. And then, in 2017, something major happens. Sinwar is elected the leader of Hamas in Gaza.
Wow. A real turning point.
It's a shift towards a leader known for his military background, his hardline stance.
So what did this mean for Hamas?
Well, it signaled a new chapter.
In what way?
Sinwar brought a lot of experience to the role.
From his time in prison, his involvement in the resistance.
He understands the conflict on a deep level.
So how did he lead?
Well, he continued to develop Hamas's military capabilities.
The rockets, the tunnels.
But he also focused on strengthening their social and political infrastructure in Gaza.
Interesting. So he wasn't just focused on military might.
No.
No.
He emphasized education, healthcare, social services.
Trying to build a more resilient society.
Exactly. He knew the military strength wasn't enough.
They needed to be able to function under difficult circumstances to provide for their people.
And what about negotiations? Did his hardline stance mean an end to dialogue?
Surprisingly, no.
Really?
He's still engaged in indirect talks with Israel.
What were they trying to achieve?
Things like prisoner releases, easing the blockade on Gaza, addressing humanitarian concerns.
So even with his tough reputation, he still saw a role for negotiation.
He did. It wasn't about weakness. It was about strategic flexibility.
He understood the need to improve the lives of Palestinians in Gaza while still pushing for their long-term goals.
It's a delicate balance.
It is.
Yeah.
Maintaining that commitment to resistance while recognizing the need for pragmatism.
Making those tough choices, that's
Yeah.
leadership in a conflict like this.
Sinwar's story is really something else, isn't it? From refugee camps to prisons to leading Hamas. It's incredible.
It really is. And, it's not just his personal journey.
No.
It kind of reflects the whole Palestinian experience, doesn't it? That resilience, the determination to resist.
Yeah. Reading the book of Thorns and Cloves, you really start to see the world through his eyes.
You have to move beyond those simplistic narratives.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the human realities at the heart of this conflict.
And remembering that behind all the politics, there are real people trying to live their lives.
With families, dreams, hopes.
Yeah. Sinwar weaving his personal story into the larger narrative, it makes it all so much more powerful, so much more human.
It does. So having gone through all of this with us, what stands out to you the most?
For me, it's that sense of hope that Sinwar never loses.
Even in the darkest moments.
It's a testament to the human spirit.
The ability to keep going, to believe in a better future.
Even when things seem impossible.
It makes you wonder, what would you have done in his place?
Faced with those choices.
That's a question that sticks with you.
It challenges your own beliefs, your own values.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, it's important to remember that this is just one perspective.
Right.
Sinwar's story.
It's crucial to seek out other voices, to hear different narratives.
To really understand this complex conflict.
To see all sides.
We hope this deep dive has given you a new lens through which to view it all.
And sparked your curiosity to learn more.
Keep questioning, keep exploring. Thanks for joining us.